Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. Let me first express gratitude for the lands where we live and work. The University of Calgary, located in the heart of southern Alberta, both acknowledges and pays tribute to the traditional territories of the peoples of Treaty 7, which include the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, including Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nations. The City of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. Welcome, everyone. I'm Sandy Hershkovich. I'm the Senior Associate Dean of the Haskayne School of Business, and I'm delighted to be here today, and I'm delighted that you're here with us. We have a dignitary here with us today, Jyoti Gondek, Mayor of Calgary. Welcome. We have a very special event for you today, but it's a little bit bittersweet. We're both saying farewell to a dean who's dedicated 11 years to Haskayne and elevated us in ways that we couldn't have imagined only a few years ago. And we're welcoming a new leader who I have no doubt will take us to even greater heights yet unimagined. To say that our connection to Calgary's community is important is an understatement, and Jim was a dean who knew that well. Jim's focus on community outreach has been a beacon of leadership. His engagement with the business community helped to give us CDL Rockies, the Trico Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship, the Westman Center for Real Estate Studies, and of course, the building we're sitting in right now. And now, thanks to the solid foundation that Jim's built, Haskayne is at a natural inflection point where a new leader can take the baton and run with it. Since 2018, Dr. Gina Grandy has been Dean of the Hill and Levene Schools of Business at the University of Regina. Gina believes that business schools need to be relevant to communities they serve as a place for innovation, research, and tackling the big challenges of the business community. That's why she's here today. Not just to introduce herself, but to begin a conversation about the future of business in Calgary and how she and the Haskayne School of Business can and should be part of that change. As you all know, a good strategic plan begins with engaging key stakeholders to ask, what is most important to you? That's a conversation she'll be having frequently when she starts in September, so consider today an early preview. I'm super excited to introduce Drs. Jim Dewald and Gina Grandy, if you could join me on the stage. So as some of you might know, Haskayne Hour is a series through the Associate Dean Research Office, which brings together research and executives to explore big ideas in 1 hour. Today's a bit different. Today we're bringing to you our incoming and outgoing deans in a discussion about the role business schools play in society. We'll have a 30-minute facilitated discussion between Gina and Jim, and we'll have about 20 minutes for audience questions. You can submit your questions through Slido using your device. So in a few minutes, there'll be a QR code that comes up. There you go. You can use that to ask questions, and people can upvote questions. So if you want a particular question asked, then just like it. And you can also ask questions in person live as well. So if you just raise your hand, we have roaming mics coming around, and someone will bring you a mic. So I'm going to sit down, and then we're going to get started. Okay, let's start with an easy one for you, Gina. You're new to the community, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, and I will say thank you to all of you for coming tonight and this opportunity. This really should be Jim's opportunity to shine and honor his legacy, but I suspect all of you know Jim better than I do, and he was insistent that he share the stage, so I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here. As Sandy has said, I'm coming from Regina to Calgary. I've been in Regina for 10 years, the last 5 as the dean, and prior to that about 1.5 years as associate dean of grad programs and research. But if you don't know already, some of you with an East Coast flair will know very soon before I tell you that I'm originally from the East Coast. So I moved from New Brunswick to Regina, and I spent in total about 13 years in New Brunswick, but I am a proud Newfoundlander. And that is important to me in regards to growing up in small rural community, and you don't realize the impact that has until you get much later in life. So I love a big city, but there's a lot of, I'll say, small town roots within me as well. And so I'm pleased to be here. I come from, I've spent some time in the UK as well, and I've taught, this will be my 8th university that in some capacity has employed me. So across Canada, the UK, as well as in the Ukraine for a few short stints. My areas of research, and I try to maintain some level of activity and research, which is hard as a dean, but my areas of research and interest are in women in leadership, as well as in stigmatized work. And I say that because it will inform what I talk about, and I think some of the decisions and how I make those decisions. I'm absolutely excited to be in Calgary, and I know that Jim leaves big shoes to fill, and as a second-time dean coming into this, really what a treat to, this room in and of itself, and this building is a testament really to Jim's legacy and leadership, and how fortunate am I to be able to start in a place like this. So thank you.
Okay, this one is for both of you, but I'm going to put you on the hot seat first, Jim. What's your assessment of Alberta's economy right now, and what opportunities do you see for business schools to strengthen the economy?
Well, thanks, Sandy, and I do have to sidetrack just a bit and thank everyone for coming. I mean, what an audience. This is really outstanding, just fabulous. When you said you have some dignitaries, I thought that could go on for an hour or so. It's great to see so many special people here. Calgary, and here's a very special person right now. Hello. So please welcome Her Honor, Lois Mitchell. Thank you so much. Calgary faces a lot of challenges, but tremendous opportunities. What is happening with the energy industry going forward? Nobody's quite sure. There certainly is a feeling, we found out last night, that people feel there's an ongoing battle with the federal government and what our destiny is. And so there's kind of some anchors around that. Now on the other side, we see tremendous opportunities, and we really see it a lot here in our school. A lot of it to do with startup, new initiatives, many of them in technology and many of them related to energy, whether it's conventional energy and making it cleaner or more efficient, or alternative energy. A lot of it around agriculture and along food production and preservation. And then medical is probably the third area where, there's a lot going on in the city. So on balance, I would say we're very well situated in Calgary. It's a beautiful place to live. One thing that, being in this position, we hire faculty from all over the world. And I would say about midway through their first winter, they're thinking, what a mistake. But honestly, they stay. Our track record is probably 90% that feel this is where they want to stay, make their home, which is a testament to our community, the quality of people who make Calgary home. And so I think when you put all that together, I feel quite good about our future, Sandy, and I think it's very exciting to have Gina take over. I will say one other thing that I'm going to take credit. Janet Souls is here, who is the one who ran the search and got Gina, but no, I take credit for this. And here's how the story went. I talked to Gina almost a year ago and said, you should come over to Calgary. She says, well, Jim, as she just said, I'm really, an Atlantic gal, and if I'm going to move, I'll probably go east because I want to be closer to Newfoundland. I said, you're in luck, because being in Calgary is way closer to Newfoundland than being in Regina.
He means the flights are much better. Thank you, Jim. You don't really leave much for me to add. I think it would be, people wouldn't be happy if I just said ditto, so I'll try to say a little more than that, and maybe focus a bit more on perhaps the business school, and so where there may be opportunities as it relates to some of those aspects of the economy that you talked about. Here's one thing someone said to me, I think very wise said to me about Calgary, and yeah, there may be challenges, but I'm going to say what I have observed, there's a grit about Calgary and people in Calgary, and a resilience and an entrepreneurial spirit. And someone said to me that a bad day in Calgary is still a good day when it comes to the economy and opportunities and people being able to turn around. I think that's really, really important and exciting. Other thing I'll say in regards to the business school, I think the business school, Haskayne, when it comes to the economy, there is no better, I don't know who else is here in the audience, so I have to be careful, but the business school in Haskayne, not only does it have a long history of success, all of you really speak to how connected it is to the community, but we have lots of opportunity as well in regards to looking at labor force shortages that we see in Calgary and beyond Calgary. When we look at the increasing diverse population in Calgary and people with international credentials that are not recognized locally. So how is it and what is it we can do at Haskayne to be able to create some of those bridges around micro-credentialing, as an example, to be able to address some of those gaps in the labor force. And I think Haskayne is in the ideal place to be able to do that.
Wonderful, thank you. So Jim, you've had 11 years as dean. Wow. Can you share with us an overview of where the school has been and where it is now?
Well, thanks, Sandy. And we have lots of stats. Look, we have doubled our endowment, and we've increased our students about 35% at the undergrad, about actually over 100% on the graduate program. So. And our faculty is up about 35%. But I think what is really important is the connections that we've made within the school and within the community. And we had, to me, a great day was at the end of April, we had our annual faculty and staff retreat. And I really could feel the energy in that room. People were just very committed to where the school is going, to what we can do for our students, how we can impact the community, and that's what really sticks with me. So it's hard to measure, but I really feel good about it. The other great thing is I was very smart and hired you. So it's been a good run. We've hired some really great people, and we have a lot of devotion and commitment within the school, and it really shows, and our students comment on that to us, so I'm proud of that.
So hearing that, Gina, can you tell us a little bit about what excites you about joining Haskayne?
There are lots of things. And again, I'm going to say, perhaps it's the easiest way to say it, and I'll say more, what is it about Haskayne and Calgary that I wouldn't be excited about? As we've talked about, Jim is leaving a legacy that places a new dean coming in and has a great foundation and a great place to leap from. So I'm grateful for that. But if we think about this building in particular, that is completely student focused, it also speaks to the community support that is in place here. When we look at the research that's been happening in the school and how that actually, the rankings of Haskayne and research and the quality and credibility of the research that's been happening, when we look at the connection to community, and as a dean where I am now, there is a lot of that, but when the announcement came out, if I had doubts, and I did not, Janet, I did not have doubts, the response has been tremendous from all of you in regards to inviting me here. So that entrepreneurial spirit, that grit, that welcoming sense, and many people have said to me, even today, it's okay that you're not from Calgary. I'm not from Calgary, or we're a very welcoming place, so why wouldn't I want to be here? It is a fantastic place to be. A couple of people have said to me as well, it's a big change. And I said, well, I'm pretty sure about at least a third of the people in Calgary are from Saskatchewan. It's not that really big of a change.
So I have a question that I think some of the women in this room may have faced before. So you shared with me last night that after telling one of your mentors that you had taken on the deanship here at Haskayne, his advice to you was that you don't want to become known as the, quote, woman dean. How do you respond to that?
I'll tell you first how I responded to him. What I said was, but I am a woman dean. And to qualify that a little bit, I may be the first woman dean at Haskayne, but actually I wasn't the first woman dean at Hill and Levene Schools of Business. And so it's an interesting place to be in. I feel very privileged and grateful. So, gender matters to me, and it should matter actually to all of us. And so I bring that, I am sure, to my leadership style, to the decisions that I make, to the conversations that we are having. But there will be lots of things that you're not going to see any differences. And so while a woman dean may be new to you, a woman dean is not new to me. And so I'm quite excited and quite grateful about being here.
Jim, do you have anything to add there?
Well, honestly, I am just overjoyed that Gina is taking over our school, and it's so long overdue. Many people here would have been in sessions where I give a little talk about, and the main question I ask is, I can walk down the halls and I can take you and show you BCom photos from the 1980s, and 48% to 50% of the photos are women. And so my question is, 43 years later, why would there not be 48 to 50% CEOs women? It doesn't make sense. We are definitely causing barriers. We got problems. And then I think through my own history, because I was pretty fortunate, I rose to CEO rank 10 years after graduation. I think, well, how did I do that? Well, now I realize when I think back, sure, I go golfing with the guys, I go drinking with the guys, we go fishing. We made this little clique and cut people out. And this is just so wrong. And I'm so embarrassed and ashamed about it. Not only that, but think about what our economy is missing. Because there's so many strong, talented people who were cut out along the way. And we have to just clear out all those filters. And if that means, and I do get criticized from people saying, well, Jim, you're going too far the other way. No. There's a lot of balancing to go on here. So that's maybe a lot to throw on Gina, but I'm really excited because I know Gina as well. She's great for this role, and just so excited to have you here.
So then, given that, and before I go to the many, many questions we already have on our Slido, do you have any words of wisdom you want to share with Gina?
Be kind, Jim, be kind.
I think just being open and connecting with people, the community will really help you. When you think, and there will be days, this job, like any leadership job, has days of isolation and loneliness, and I would say just reach out, and there's 100 people here that would help you out. It's a great community for that. I'll be around too. Maybe nobody told you, but I get to stay on as a professor. I'll try to be good.
I'm sure you will be. I'm sure you will be.
Okay, I'm going to go to a question from the audience. So, it just moved on me. So there's a question for Gina first. What are your thoughts on making the Haskayne School of Business the business school of choice for Indigenous students? And I know you've done some work on that in Hill and Levene schools.
I think there's lots of opportunities there. I mean, I know that in Calgary, one of the fastest growing populations are around Indigenous people. I can say that in my current role, we have a long way to go. So not where I am now, but I think in general, we have a long way to go around our commitment to truth and reconciliation. But here's what I will say is that, like anything where we talk about creating and supporting opportunities, and there are lots of ways to be able to do it, but if we are serious about doing something like that, we're not talking about, okay, let's get 1 or 2 students. We have to be thinking, and again, I'm not Indigenous, and I think it's to people who are Indigenous where I need to seek advice and continue to do that. But there are lots of things I think, we can be doing around increasing, whether it's cohort programs, whether it's awards. And I'll just give an example. And I talked about this earlier today, but we set up an Indigenous Pathways program for students coming into grad programs where I currently am, and multi-year awards, and I emphasize awards. There were also all graduate students and now all staff and faculty do the 4 Seasons of Reconciliation, which is a professional development program offered through First Nations University. And so this is not only about making it the choice for Indigenous students. I think we need to be able to see that through everything we do in regards to staff, in regards to faculty, in regards to our space, and really it will be about me seeking advice from those people who actually who want to be here, and how best are we able to create that space so that we are meeting those commitments. And that means all of us actually have to change a fair bit as well in our own thinking. So I think there's lots of opportunity, and I say that not from a place whereby here's an untapped market of students that we can bring in. I say it from a place in regards to we have an obligation to be able to move forward, but we need to listen to Indigenous people as to how best to do that.
Great. Yes, I agree, and we have some work to do here. People want to know, Jim, from your time as dean, what are you most proud of, and what do you hope continues as you pass on the baton?
Oh, thanks, Sandy, and thanks to whoever posted the question. I am most proud of the culture that we built in our school. I think it's strong. We look out for each other. Clearly, I'm proud of this building and very thankful to Ron Mathison for his super generous and important gift. And Gina and I had lunch with Ron Mathison and Dick Haskayne today, and which was great, and Deborah Yedlin. And I think just our programs, too, our graduate programs, we had just the MBA and the PhD. Now we've added on the Masters of Management and an accelerated MBA and a Doctorate of Business. And I'd be happy to pitch any of those degrees to anybody in the audience afterwards. I'm always selling tickets to the program. It's really been a great run, and we've had a great team and just enjoyed every moment of it. But it is time to move on.
Okay,
I hear though you're just going down the hallway. That's what I've heard. So,
Gina, with you, University of Calgary's focus on entrepreneurship, new technologies, and new energies, how is the School of Business adapting or able to adapt to these needs?
the entrepreneurship one is easy for me to answer. I mean, the Haskayne School has a long history around entrepreneurship in a number of ways, and we've seen tremendous, you've seen tremendous community support with the Hunter Hub, the Hunter Center, with CDL, and so, there's already the programming that's in place where all students, I believe, in the BCom have to do not 1, but 2 courses in entrepreneurial thinking. So I believe Haskayne is already in a tremendous place when it comes to responding to entrepreneurship. And, I think what Haskayne has done is in many ways shared its wealth and its knowledge and expertise across campus to also create opportunities across campus and in the community as well. So I believe on the entrepreneurship side, I think it's already there. I think there are opportunities as well around Indigenous entrepreneurship, women's entrepreneurship that really will build upon the strong foundation that is currently there. As I understand it, I think the CDL is doing work around, ag and tech, and is already doing some great work in those areas. And I assume once I learn more about it and what's happening, I think Haskayne is already in a really great place. And based on the conversations I've had today and over the last few days, I know there are also lots of ideas in this room as to how we might be able to build upon that.
So you're going to be calling a few people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, Haskayne's been hit, and the university has been hit by provincial budget cuts. What strategies do you have to help deal with the repercussions of those cuts? And this is for both of you.
That's easy. I'm going to hand it over to Gina.
I mentioned earlier that I believe of many schools and faculties, the business school is perhaps one of the ones that are best positioned to be able to. Cuts are never great. Tightening is never great. It always has an impact, will always have an impact on students, staff, faculty, all those things. So I don't want to downplay that. But there are a number of opportunities that are in place, and so there are opportunities around. The business school is well positioned to grow its support in regards to the community and donor development and community support that not all other schools are in that type of place, and there's a strong legacy already in place there. Another area that I'll talk about is around. And I'll say, just give me a second to get there before we jump. I will say that University of Calgary and Haskayne is also in a really good position when it comes to strategic, deliberate, thoughtful engagement around international student recruitment. And I framed it very deliberately the way that I did. There are many academic institutions across this country right now does not have that right. And I don't mean in the sense that that's not an anti-international sentiment that I'm saying. In fact, it's incredibly important. But there are too many universities across this country whose business model is actually relying on the tuition from international students. And when things get tough, it also gets tough there. And I think the U of C and Haskayne is in a really good position to engage in thoughtful international recruitment. The reputation of Haskayne is such that actually it means that we can make sure that where we are going around programs and making sure students have the academic readiness. So I believe that is a lever, if I can say it that way, that does cushion Haskayne, and I don't think, based on what I know, I don't think Haskayne is in any concern right now where the business model is going to be threatened because we're making less than, I'll say, how do I say this? We're not in a crisis or situation where it becomes an imperative. We're actually in a really good place to be able to say, how do we want to do this right? I'm good. I'm just going to see if Jim has anything that he can share so that on his way out, maybe I want to write this down.
No, actually, I was just thinking this is proof positive that you're the right person at the right time. It's time for me to move on. That was a great answer.
Okay, so today in my inbox there was a report from someone that I'd asked for them to write me about a particular position that I wanted filled, and when I read it, it was filled with responses from ChatGPT, and they acknowledged that as part of the report. And so here we are, AI is really influencing how things are going in the world and in business schools. So can you talk a little bit about the impact of AI on business schools in terms of teaching and ethics and decision making? You can go first, Jim. We're going to put you on the hot seat.
Well, it certainly, I'm sure, like Gina in Regina, when it first came out, we had a lot of talks here, and we had faculty council meeting when we discussed it. And what I really appreciated was our faculty approach was, how do we what's the word I'm looking for? But bring this into what we're doing. We're not going to try and freeze it out. We can't stop it. And how do we take advantage from it? And I know, just as an example, I know one professor who developed assignments for the winter term that started with, put this into ChatGPT and then take what comes out and analyze it. And so it's really using the tool. And the analogy that we use is kind of like when calculators first came out, which most people here won't, well, a few of us remember, you know, and it was totally outlawed. You couldn't dare bring it to class or anything, which is so ridiculous when you think about it. So now we're trying to bring it in more. We're not there yet, but I don't know, what's your experience with it?
I would agree, Jim, that there is no denying it, and so I think to say, oh, this doesn't exist and it's not going to change. It's like, think about where we were with Google, right? And what that was going to do. So I think it is part of our reality. I can talk about where we are now at Regina, and some of the struggles we see is getting that balance between more students, of course, wanting to engage in remote delivery, and we want to increase accessibility to students and the flexibility. What we have observed, and we haven't done long-term trends on it, but overwhelmingly the suspected academic misconduct cases are coming from those who are engaging through remote delivery. Now, I think there are a number of things in there to unpack. One is the notion that actually we need to be perhaps rethinking our assessments and talking about our colleague who's here in Haskayne. So how are we assessing, in what way? I don't think the solution is stop doing remote delivery. I think that is where we are and need to be. But we haven't figured this out yet. And, you know, I made a comment at our Dean's Council recently when someone did a presentation on ChatGPT and we were talking about cuts. And so my suggestion to the provost was, I can save you a few $1 million. I think it's smarter than I am. So maybe you just get rid of the full Dean's Council and replace this by ChatGPT. So I don't want to be frivolous about it, but it is our reality. On the one hand, I might say for our businesses is that I think in some ways it's going to change. Like, some of the answers, they're not 100% accurate, but some of the answers that are coming out may very well change the type of skilled workers and the skilled work that we want. And so that means, I think, as the business school, we also need to be thinking about is this going to fundamentally change what businesses need and want in our organizations, because they can get many of those types of responses, or can we elevate that to be able to get it? And so I think there's opportunity, and I don't think we've quite figured it out yet. And the technology, I don't think the increasing the surveillance and monitoring is necessarily going to solve it. I think it's how do we find our way through it?
I like the way you framed it, because it's more like looking at it as an outcome. At the end of the day, we want our students in your companies to be able to use it to advantage, to do their job better. So that's how we want to position them.
Now, I would be remiss, I don't know if Deborah's here or not, but at lunchtime we talked about the need for effective written communication skills. I mean, it's not lost on me that, of course, there is a risk, right? When a system can write for us, there is some risk there, and so I don't want to lose that. But I think there's a bigger question there, because for years people have been buying essays. For years there have been all kinds of tricks. In my day, people wrote up their legs and their arms. It's more sophisticated now. But I do think there are questions around kind of the communication skills, and we want to make sure we don't lose that. We want to make, regardless of the type of work that's going to be needed, we need people who are effective communicators. And so how, as business schools, do we still ensure we're able to build that into our programs?
Great answer. Yeah, this is a tough thing that we're all going to have to grapple with over the coming years. Before I go to the next question, I keep forgetting to ask. I know that some people may not have their devices. We do have roaming mics. People may just like to put up their hands and ask questions in person. So is there anyone who would like to ask a question? We've got right over here. Karen, yeah, right over here.
Hi, Gina, welcome. I have
you.
a question. You mentioned this concept in the very beginning of when you first spoke, which is micro-credentials. And so certainly within North America and really the world over, business schools are looking at micro-credentials as an alternative source of revenue through a whole bunch of different modalities. So I'm wondering about Haskayne's position on micro-credentials going forward.
I like how you added that part at the end, going forward, because I thought, okay, I'm going to have to ask somebody else what the position is. I know there are a lot of faculty members here as well, so this might be the end of me before I get started. I think there's lots of opportunity. What I'm hearing in the business community is that people are not saying that there isn't a value in a degree, and I think that's important. We have this fear, I think, that there's no more need for people to have degrees. That's not what I'm hearing in the business community. What I am hearing in the business community is that that students aren't ready when they graduate. And I think it's, when you think about business schools in Haskayne and across the country, how much we put into experiential learning and career readiness, we still have a lot of work to do. When I hear CEOs saying to me, they're not ready, and I don't need them to have a degree in supply chain management or a degree in data analytics, but what I need is for them to have a starting point so we can have some of those conversations. And so that's where I think there is tremendous opportunity. I think there's opportunity for those who are already in the community to come back, whether it's at the undergrad level or the grad level, if we're talking about for credit. But I think there are tons of BCom students, and I know Haskayne already has a couple of them, micro-credentials, but my experience is that BCom students, and I think students in general, but BCom students want to be able to do their degree and major in or have a concentration, but they love those additional credentials. And, the BCom program at Haskayne has, 8, 9, 10 concentrations? 18, okay. So I'm going to frame that there are lots of opportunities for us to be able to look at kind of some of those concentrations and say, okay, can someone who's doing a major in accounting alongside of that do a micro-credential in whether it's entrepreneurship, which is in place, supply chain management. I also believe that there are opportunities on the non-credit side, and I would say that in an academic institution, we can be more nimble typically when it comes to the non-credit side and setting up micro-credentials because it can go through Haskayne's executive education programming. So I think Haskayne is there, and I think we have to be there, and there's plenty of opportunity, and I think both in regards to servicing students' current needs, I think the business community needs, and yeah, absolutely, possibly revenue generation there as well.
Did you have anything to say?
No, I really like how when you said revenue generation, that put a smile on your face.
Are there any other questions from the audience? Okay. So this one is for you, Gina, and it's something that we talked about a few years ago, and you and I talked about it briefly today. A few years ago, Jim had the idea of taking the business school downtown, and we were exploring that option, and then as soon as we mentioned it to the university, they gave us a new building. So, Gina, are you considering taking the school downtown, leveraging the City of Calgary's downtown revitalization plan that is encouraging post-secondary to move?
Great question, and in fairness, I think it's too early for me to be able to answer that. But one thing I can say is business schools, we have to continue to be relevant. And when we talk about the space and place that we have in the community, and I know that there's a lot happening around revitalization of downtown, and so we have to be part of that conversation. And if we are part of that, we need to be thinking strategically about which programs, because keep in mind for our undergrad students, they're doing courses all across campus, right? And so there are some logistic considerations that have to come in play, but it may be more naturally aligned for, let's say, some of our executive MBA, some of our grad programs, if we're doing some, let's say, cohort-based new opportunities around programming, so whether that's micro-credentialing. So I think that we should be a part of the community. If anyone is going to be down there in post-secondary, I believe that Haskayne should be a part of that. we just need to be thoughtful and strategic about who we're serving in the downtown area and how best to be able to service them.
Yeah, that's a great response. And one of the issues we talked about was students having to go back and forth from campus and downtown, and faculty as well, staff as well, and also just the connection with the university. That's really so important.
And Sandy, if I can add a comment to that, when I worked in the UK, they did have multiple campuses, and so it can work. It sometimes can be a little messy for students and faculty, but there has to be the infrastructure there, right? And that notion of whether it's busing students, whether it's full day schedules. And so I know it's not quite as far as when I, distance-wise, but I think the logistics part has to be considered. So if it's Fridays, for example, then probably going to have more, maybe not Fridays, but let's say it's Mondays, more faculty members who might say, yeah, it makes sense for the programming. So I think there are a number of things to be thought through as to how do we do it well, to be able to not also jeopardize, of course, the community that's building in Mathison Hall.
Jim, you had thought about this a few years ago. Do you have anything to add?
Well, maybe I'll just add that we did really seriously. We had a realtor, we had an architect working, and we looked at specific buildings downtown. And I know and people will say, come on, there's empty space here, why don't you just take it? It's not that easy. It doesn't really configure itself for lecture theaters or rooms like this. B, it's very expensive to do the renovations. Do you buy or do you lease? And then the major problem was the logistics. So our BCom students are taking half their classes through economics or sociology or statistics and so on and so forth. So what are they going to sit on the train all day? You know, and you can do things like Monday, Tuesday here. But it was just looking way too complex and saving no money at all. And so I just want people to know we took a hard look at it. It wasn't the easiest thing to do. And I should actually mention one other thing. Sorry, Sandy, I got you. You might notice that the name on the outside is a downtown office owner, so.
I like the idea, though, of thinking of whether it could work for a program or some programs if we think about it strategically. So definitely maybe an opportunity there. Jim, what has been the best advice that you received as a new dean that you always followed during your tenure as dean?
Well, I'm going to go back to Mike Mahar, who I think a lot of people here would remember, and I'll just say that this past year we lost two former deans, Mike Mahar and George Lane, both passed away, and when I first got the job, though, I did contact Mike and got together with him, and he was pretty clear on a few things. Of course, Mike was always pretty clear on everything. Really loved him for that. And he told me, and I guess I'll tell you, Gina, to be visible, to be out there. He said, you know, every day you should try and walk all the halls of the building, which of course I don't do. I'm not as good as he was, and make sure you connect with as many people as possible. And it was just, you know, like common sense leadership stuff, but really good. He definitely told me don't take any guff from Central, but I don't really. I love Central, so we're a little different on that side. And he really emphasized how important the community is and how the business school in particular is an entry for the entire university to the business school. So I really treasure the good advice I got from Mike. And I'll just add one other thing, because George Lane and Mike actually followed each other. So George Lane was dean till 1976, from 1976 to 1981. And then Mike did a 19-year reign from 1981 to 1999. George was an Albertan, and Mike came from Saskatchewan. Deja vu.
Okay, so going back to, this question's been lingering for a long time, and I'm going to ask it now. People, at the beginning when you talked about being a woman leader, and you talked about how that would influence your leadership, people want to know what in particular about women in leadership inspires your thinking and approach to leadership the most.
When I'll be honest, I did not envision myself as a dean. My life as an academic, full-time academic life was good. Life was really good. I had I loved my job, loved my research. One of my areas of research is in women in leadership. And so I was teaching at University of Regina a women in leadership course. Had some great sponsors, so men sponsors there who said, Gina, we need to deliver this course. It was a pilot, it was great. Did it a number of years, and the women in that, women in those classes were inspiring to me. So I was, and the research shows this, that women are more likely to say they're not ready or that they need to be shoulder tapped several times over. And I know the research on this, and yet I still did it. So when I wouldn't step into the I was asked to step into the associate dean role, and I essentially said to my dean, thank you, but no. But I'll think about it for the weekend, and it was an appointment, a temporary appointment. I then somewhat reluctantly put my name forward for the associate dean role, and when the dean position came up fairly quickly, so I'd only been associate dean for a year and a half, I can say that our provost at the time shoulder tapped me. I had 2 deans across campus who shoulder tapped me. In fact, our provost at the time, and I knew there was a process in place, came back the second time and said, Gina, your application's not in yet. And I said, yeah, and I'm not sure it's gonna be. But I can tell you that one of the things, so I am compelled to service and in service of others, and that's really important, and I believe creating opportunities for others really, really important and drives me. But so I am getting there, one of the key things that influenced my decision to put my name forward was thinking about teaching that women in leadership class and knowing the research and hearing how I responded. And I thought, how could I be in a classroom and encourage and nudge all of these women to kind of step forward to give it a try if I am not willing to do it myself? And so really it is about that notion of stepping forward, give it a try. And so it's influenced even my decision about whether or not I would step into a leadership role. And I think I balance what might be stereotypical aspects around what we might consider both more perhaps masculine ways to manage and more feminine ways to manage. And quite frankly, I think the expectations are that women actually have to manage both of those. And sorry, Jim, I don't think the expectation is quite the same on you. But I'm okay with that. I don't know if I answered the question, but whoever asked me can get me on the way out if you want a different answer.
No, I think you did very well, and it is a balancing, it's a tightrope we women walk to sort of meet the expectations of what a leader should be in the eyes of others, and then also meet the expectations of what a woman should be. So it's a tricky thing. Okay, I hope this will be the last conversation we have about women and leading in this kind of context.
Oh, I hope not, actually. I hope
okay.
not, yeah.
Well, okay, good. We'll dialogue about that offline. Okay, so I'm just looking at time. It's 5:22. We have maybe time for one more question. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask in person? Yep, there's a hand up back there. 2 hands. Perfect.
Is it on? There you go. First, welcome to Calgary.
Thank you.
Jim, congratulations. It's been amazing to watch what you've done with the Haskayne School of Business, because prior to you coming, I will be boldly saying that I'm not sure all industry understood the important connection between our School of Business and our corporate industries in Calgary. I'd like to know how we as industry, all different industries, because right now I'm working in healthcare, and I used to work in energy, and I've worked in construction, and I've worked in agriculture. How can we help you? How can we help you be successful?
Thank you very much. And lots of people have asked me that already, and so just asking the question is I'm very grateful for that. Today, there are a couple of things I guess that I had said is, I think introductions, really, really important. I moved to Regina and didn't really know anyone, and kind of, we've done really well in regards to the community, but I don't know what I don't know either. And so I think having this tremendous resource of people, so I would say that would be one thing, is make introductions, send me invitations if you think I need to be at the table. And I love that notion across sectors, because when we look at who our students are and when we look about the opportunities around collaboration, it is across sectors. And so I would say to you, please introduce yourself to me on the way out and invite me places so that my schedule is filled and I'm able to benefit from all of your expertise and your context and hear and listen to what it is you have to offer. So thank you.
Okay, I've been given the 1-minute warning. So we will be having wine and cheese and so on outside, so you'll have an opportunity to ask Gina your questions. We also have these questions here on the device that we've captured, so we'll put those to her to think about. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. I think everyone is looking forward to the opportunity to connect with you more over the coming months and years, Gina. I want to now turn this over to Penny Worthner, who I believe is here, who's the Interim Provost and Vice President Academic of the University of Calgary, to say a few closing words.
I get to stand behind the podium, okay? Well, I will be brief because I know I'm holding you up from wine and cheese, and I think I need a glass. I'm on my 3rd convocation so far this week, with a few more to go. It's my great pleasure to be here. I'm sorry that I couldn't be here for the entire hour. I'm sure it was a terrific conversation, but I was with engineering all day. Many, many wonderful engineering students graduating. Well, first I will just start by saying thank you so much to Dr. Jim Dewald. Jim has become, for me anyways, a great friend over the last 10 years. Well, I guess 11 now. I was Dean of the Faculty of Kinesiology for 10 years and then stepped into this role last year and will be in it for 1 more year. But it's been a great pleasure, Jim, to work with you, to have you as a colleague, to talk about the things that we face as deans, and to occasionally have a few glasses of wine. So it's been, Jim has been a great individual to work with, and I'm sure that all of you at the Haskayne School of Business will miss him, as I certainly will, but I'm sure he'll still be around, so he's really not going to go that far, I'm sure. And then it is very much my pleasure to see Gina since we've conducted the search, and to welcome Dr. Gina Grandy as your new Dean of the Haskayne School of Business. And I'm very confident in the work that she's going to do with you and continue to move Haskayne forward. So thank you all for being here, and all the best, Jim. We'll have a few glasses of wine before, or over the summer, or however that rolls out. And then I know you'll be in great hands with Sandy as your interim, and then Dr. Grandy will join you September 1. So thank you. Happy to be here for the few moments, and then I'll have a glass of wine with you.